Welcome back again. This is part 2 or version 2 of our thermometer project for our pizza oven. We're taking things up a level now, so in the previous video, which I'll put a link to somewhere on here if I can figure out how to do that, and in the first video we just had the thermocouple connected to a simple 8266 ESP8266 microcontroller. Now what we want to do is have a nice display and put it all in a nice box. For that we're going to need a little bit more processing power, so we're going to have to go to an ESP32 for this one. So I will run you through this code really quickly. Most of these items at the top here we covered in the last video, so the Wi-Fi settings over the air and the board. It's going to be an ESP32 board this time, so that's different. One of the main differences here is we're now using an external component, which is the LVGL component that hopefully in the future will be an official part of ESPHome. But at the moment this is an experimental branch, it's a development branch that Clyde and his team are working on. The SPI bus, we've added in both the Mozzie pin and the MISO pin, and we have the old sensor that we did from the last one, so the MAX6675, with the addition now of some script here that says that when the value changes we're going to update our label that says the temperature in degrees, and we're going to also update our temperature needle on our meter. We have a second device now on our SPI bus, which is the display. We set that to the dimensions of 240 by 240. I'm only using 40 megahertz speed on this one. You can have 80 megahertz, but I think 40 is fine for what we're doing. Set the chip select pin, reset pin, DC pin, and we have to set the update interval never and the auto clear enabled false. Particularly for the LVGL library, it specifies that. We've set a font, and we get into configuring our actual component here. So LVGL, we set up our basic color depth. We want a black background color. We want to align everything to the center and into our widget. So we're going to create a meter. This is the dial interface. Set its size, set the background as transparent, and a little bit of padding. We need that because when I fit it in the case I need to bring the screen in a little bit because it gets cut off with the bezel. Okay, for the meter we set scales which have ticks, so they're the little lines that you see on like a watch clock face. You set how many of them, the colour, the length of them, the major ones, so these will be the 100, 200, 300, 400 and 500 marks. We set those as just a bit thicker and a bit longer. We're setting our temperature range from 0 to 500, and we're going to do that in a 270 degree arc, so it just looks like a normal temperature dial. And our indicators are our actual needle where it's pointing, and we've got an arc tick style here. This just does the blue segment on the left hand side, so the 0 to 100 degrees when it's cold, and then the arc and the tick style for the right hand side, which will be our red section whereby the oven's too hot really to cook. And the last is the label that sits at the bottom of the gauge that just shows the actual temperature in numbers. And that's it. Nice and simple. I really hope this LVGL component makes its way into a full release of ESPHome, because it is so nice to work with, and there's lots of other widgets that will be very handy to use. Final part is the case. I've used an aluminium case. I've just drilled out the hole for the display. And then sprayed the lid black, put some lacquer on it, and on the final coating I've put in this plastic bezel just to hide my very crude ways of cutting a hole in the lid. But I think the result has come out quite polished, and I think looks quite nice. It's going to look nice when I mount it onto the pizza oven.